So the question in 2024 will be, are you voting based on Joe Biden or are you voting based on Donald Trump? Well, we're in it now. So President Trump announced last night, as predicted, that he was going to run for president of the United States. Now, he had predicted it would be the most important speech in American history. It wasn't, but it is important. I mean, when the former president of the United States announces a new presidential campaign, his third presidential campaign, that is a rather large announcement. The timing of it is really curious. It's strategically strange. Let's put it that way. Because if you are Donald Trump, what you really want to do is clear the field, right? But if you do it too early, and there are more than 700 days until the next election, this gives people a lot of time to get very tired. And this is the real enemy for Trump. The real enemy for Trump is that people become exhausted. This has always been the big problem for Trump. In 2016, people were not exhausted. It was a great act. In 2017, people were like, okay, well, he's president. This is kind of fascinating. In 2018, it didn't work out well in Congress, but his administration was doing a bunch of really, really good stuff. People are like, okay, I'll give him credit for that. And sure, there's some bad tweets. And yeah, the media hate his guts. So I'll give him more of a chance. And then 2019, more of that. And then 2020, in the pandemic, I think people got exhausted with Trump. And that is one of the rationales for why he didn't do as well in the election as he should have. And that's why he did not win when running against a person who's actually comatose. Because Joe Biden was more tired than Trump, but he was less tiring than Trump for a lot of Americans. In 2020, Donald Trump exhausted a lot of people because he was on the TV every day talking about COVID, because he seemed to be sort of all over the place in his approach to that, because every day was just revolving around him. And so the election was a referendum on him. And meanwhile, Joe Biden went back to his coffin in the evenings and during most of the day, and he just slept there. And every so often they would take him out and they would spoon feed him some oatmeal just to give him the nutrients. And then they would trot him out like directly outside of his house in Delaware. They would train a camera on him and he would go, and democracy. And then the media would cheer. And then he'd go back down into the basement. And so he wasn't exhausting in the same way that Trump was. So the problem for Trump has always been Trump. I mean, the draw of Trump is Trump. And the problem for Trump is Trump. It's nobody else. And the obstacles that Donald Trump makes for himself are the biggest obstacles that he faces, not the obstacles made by other candidates about him. Hillary Clinton tried to make him the object of ire in 2016, and it failed. Donald Trump made himself the object of ire in 2020, and it succeeded. Well, the problem is that if you launch this quickly, I mean, this is unprecedented. I'm not aware of any other presidential campaign, certainly not by a major figure like the former president of the United States, launched about a week after the midterm elections. This is super early. And it's a weird strategy, because if you really are that intimidating, why don't you slow play this thing? If you really believe that simply having your name out there is going to prevent people from jumping in, which, by the way, it might, then why would you launch this quickly? What it sort of betrays is that Trump, his campaign, is very concerned with the possibility of other people getting in. If you watch his Truth Social feed, you see a lot of this, right? Donald Trump is attacking candidates who have not yet announced and may never announce. I'm not aware that Glenn Youngkin is going to run for president of the United States. I'm not sure what Glenn Youngkin's support base would be. He's a very moderate Republican in Virginia. Ron DeSantis, a bit of a different story. And a lot of speculation that he's going to run specifically because he's termed out, right? Glenn Youngkin is in his first term. Ron DeSantis is in his second term. So that means that no matter what, he's leaving office in 2026 as governor of Florida. So if he's going to go, he sort of has to go. But he's not jumping in right now. And so the question, if you are Donald Trump, is, if I jump in November 15th, 2022, and Ron DeSantis doesn't jump in until after the end of the first legislative session, meaning in like June of 2023, that gives you, by my count, and I'm no expert, but I know how a calendar works, that gives you 8 months to simply be out there saying things. And that's very tiring. It means you're the only person at issue. I mean, if Ron DeSantis just goes about governing and doesn't pay any attention to the stuff that you're saying, and you're spending every day on Truth Social ripping into him, is that good strategy? And do you really think that Trump has the discipline not to do that? Now, if Trump spends the next 8 months ripping into Biden, then that would be a durable campaign. But do you think he's going to do that? Or do you think that he's going to be so irritated with the fact that other people are very likely to jump in halfway through next year that he's going to preemptively try to launch strikes against them? And they're meanwhile just going to be going about their business and governing and doing their stuff. Trump runs the real danger of looking petty. The first real damage that Trump has done himself in terms of his 2024 presidential campaign, aside from all the January 6th stuff, aside from sort of the oddities of what he says on Truth Social, the really big damage that he did to himself over the course of the last several months, besides picking not great candidates and not spending money on those candidates, was really over the last week when he decided that just before the election, he was going to attack DeSantis. And then after the election, he decided he was going to attack DeSantis and Youngkin. And Republicans looked at him and they said, wait, dude, who are you attacking? What are you doing? We'll get to more of this in just 1 second. First, inflation continues to plague our economy. The Daily Wire reports that in less than 2 years, inflation has soared from 1.4% to 8.6%. As of May 2022, the price of gas was up nearly 49%. The price of meat, poultry, fish up 14.2%. The price of used cars up 16%. the current administration's irresponsible spending patterns, including Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion rescue plan, continue to exacerbate the problem. Now's not the time to have all your money tied up in the stock market. Don't let your savings wither away. Hedge against inflation with gold from Birch Gold. Text BEN to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on protecting your savings with gold. Birch Gold is giving out a free gold bar with any purchase made by December 22nd, but you have to submit your claim by Black Friday. With almost 20 years of experience in converting IRAs and 401ks into precious metals IRAs, Birch Gold can help you as well. So don't sit around while the Fed devalues your hard-earned money. Text BEN to 989898. Learn how you can convert at least part of your savings into a precious metals IRA. If you place an order by December 22nd, Birch Gold will send you a free gold bar as well. Text BEN to 989898 to get started again. That's 989898 to protect your savings with gold. So, as a matter of strategy, what this feels like very much is not like Trump is holding a pair of aces. If Trump felt like he were holding a pair of aces, then presumably he would wait to see the flop. And he'd wait to see some other cards on the table because he could afford to. He could take his time. He could see what the political circumstances are like in 6 months. What this feels like is Donald Trump is trying to buy the pot with a pair of sixes. And basically, you got a pair of sixes, not amazing, like a small pocket pair. And he's scared of the flop because on the flop, you could get a 7 and somebody else could have 2 sevens. Or on the flop could be a king and somebody else just has 1 king. And so what he's going to do right now is try to buy the pot by going all in with a pair of sixes. We're going to buy the pot. We're going to buy the blinds. We're going to knock everybody out of the game. I don't think that strategically speaking, it's going to work, but it's an interesting strategy. It's certainly never been tried before. And there's a lot of time before the 2024 elections. I mean, the first primaries don't even happen until early 2024. We're talking about 14 months until the January primaries, the Iowa caucuses in 2024. So this is super early as a strategic matter. Okay, so then Trump decided that he was going to launch this thing at Mar-a-Lago, which again is an interesting move. It's not a pizzazz move. You remember that when he originally launched in 2015, it was a fascinating thing, right? He launched in June of 2015, by the way, right? Which is a lot later. That would be like launching in June of 2023, which he's not. He's launching way earlier. And he launched with a 47-minute speech. And it was fascinating because it was all new. Trump's speech last night was very long, like extremely long, like so long that Fox News actually cut out of it about halfway through. Because the speech went, I believe, 64 minutes, which is by any standard a very, very long speech. And it read in some ways almost like a State of the Union address. It had its high points, it had its low points. We're going to go through what the president said in relaunching his 2024 campaign. But the optics of it were a little bit strange, mainly because when he did it in 2015 and there was no base of support and he came down the escalator and it was like, wow, I can't tell whether this is cheesy or whether this is brilliant. It turns out that it was quite brilliant optically. Doing it at Mar-a-Lago looks like he's sort of holed up in his house, right? I mean, that's where he lives. It's sort of like me going to my living room to announce that I'm running for president of the United States. Mar-a-Lago, everybody knows that's Trump's area. If you were going to launch a popular movement, what you'd really want to do is do like a giant rally, right? You announce this in advance, like I'm going to announce, and we're not going to have 1,000 people in the room. We're going to have 20,000 people in the room, right? We're going to show the power of the Trump train. This train is going. It has no brakes, as they say. And we have 20, 30,000, like we'll fill a stadium with people who love Donald Trump. And it'll scare the living bejesus out of everybody because we'll be out there with a giant crowd. Instead, he launched it at Mar-a-Lago, essentially in his backyard, in a ballroom with like 1,000 people, all of whom were sort of handpicked friends, including people like Roger Stone, which, again, if you're going to have your campaign supporters, you probably should not try to stack people who are actually have been indicted for crimes, like as a general matter. You actually want kind of the best and the brightest. Roger Stone is not the best and the brightest when it comes to like the people you want in your front row. So there's some optical issues here too. And what it really speaks to is that I got to say, just as an optical matter, this did not feel like it had the same sort of extraordinary impact as it did when Trump ran in 2015. When Trump ran in 2015, it was like a bomb went off. Like this was wild. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Trump's been president. And so your campaign as a former president versus your campaign as a real estate guru who's very famous for being on The Apprentice in 2015, that's a totally different thing. And if you're running a very similar campaign to 2015 in 2022 or 2023, it doesn't feel the same. Right? He has the gravitas of having been president behind him, which means he should be doing the Obama thing, right? When Obama ran for re-election in 2012, he was doing it in like giant stadiums, Greek pantheon kind of stuff, fog machines, right? That's what Trump really should have done last night in re-announcing that he was launching. Instead, he did it in what felt like sort of the safest and most cautious way. And he read from a teleprompter, which of course you would imagine he should do. And it gave everybody who's a big Trump fan the opportunity to say, this is the moment Trump finally became president. Listen, when he was president, I thought the best Trump was teleprompter Trump. Whenever Trump was reading off the teleprompter, I was like, oh, thank God, he's going to say a bunch of useful things. And then when you get off teleprompter, be like, uh-oh, Where is this going? I have no idea. Trump got off teleprompter a few times last night, and it was mostly funny. But it didn't feel like top tier Trump. It just didn't. His energy level was fairly low last night. He was not out there kind of roaring and growling the way that he typically does. Now, does this mean that he can't win the Of course not. It's just a launch speech. We have a long way to go, and that's the whole point. I think people who are jumping to, he's in, that means he's the nominee, which means he will be the president. That is a lot of steps between here and there, my friends. That's a lot of steps. He's jumping in November. There will be other people who jump in. Does he have the upper hand? Of course. He has 30% of the base that loves the guy and will walk through fire for him. That gives you a really strong base. And in a divided primary, that could be well enough to just walk right through. That's exactly what happened in 2016. In the 2016 campaign, it wasn't like Trump was walking away with 70% of the vote. He wasn't. He was winning the early primaries with 25, 30% of the vote. It was only at the very end, when the field had basically winnowed down to 2, that he started winning 50% of the vote. But that's enough. Doesn't matter how you win, as long as you win. So Trump does have a solid percentage of the base locked up, for sure. But that doesn't mean there won't be other candidates. There will be other candidates. It's very early. And then if he gets the nomination, number one, we don't know whether Biden's even going to be alive by that point. But number two, even if Biden is alive, it's not clear where the economy is going to be. One thing that is clear about Donald Trump as a candidate. One, he's extremely volatile. We all know this. We can keep kind of breezing past this, but it happens to be the chief characteristic of the man is that he's extraordinarily volatile, which means he's unpredictable. That has its benefits. It also has its major and severe drawbacks in a campaign, as we saw in 2020. In 2016, it had great benefits. He would say stuff nobody else would say. In 2020, it had severe drawbacks. He would say stuff nobody else would say as president. It also shifts the focus back to Trump. Because if every election is a question as to who the referendum is on, right? Who are the people actually voting for or against? They don't vote for two candidates. They vote against one. So the question in 2024 will be, are you voting based on Joe Biden or are you voting based on Donald Trump? All righty, guys. The rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into the media's attacks on Trump and what they are hoping to accomplish. Plus, Matt Walsh stops by to talk about his marriage conversation with Joe Rogan. If you're not a member, click the link in the description and join us.